So today was a massive day for Fallout 76. We got a huge new update that would honestly be large in its own right, even if it didn't also ship with the first DLC to Fallout 76. But even outside of that, just as far as Bethesda goes in general, they also released a new trailer. There's a lot of new information in that. It shows a lot of what future content is coming to this game, and I will have a breakdown video later today. But even beyond all of that, we also got new updates with new content in Creation Club for Fallout 4 and Skyrim. All of this going on the week before spring break when I have a test and a paper due. Needless to say, I probably am not getting much sleep tonight. So in this video, I'm just going to be focusing on the new update to Fallout 76, but there's a lot going on here. Even though we got new content, this update has a lot of merit in its own right. A lot of the bug fixes and changes are actually a pretty big deal. For that reason, I will have timestamps down below for all the major categories of things I do talk about. With that in mind, you can leave a like or subscribe if you do enjoy the content or want to see some of those other videos I just mentioned. Well, either way, the first thing I do want to do is actually just kind of give my first impressions on this new DLC. And in effect, what we actually got are a new crafting station, or really two of those that tie together. This will allow you to brew and create various kinds of new alcohols, but even beyond that, there are a few new locations and a mini quest line to go along with this to actually unlock the new crafting stations. And all in all, I honestly gotta say, it is a pretty cool quest. It's very short, as I kind of expected it to be. I didn't expect a lengthy quest, but it definitely exceeded my expectations. For all the various places you do go to, they're actually decorated fairly well. They look cool, they look new, there's quite a few custom assets in them. But even further, if you're looking for more, there are holotapes or different terminal entries to give you backstory as to what was going on. You could just cut to the chase and read the ones you need for the quest, but at the same time, if you want more, it oftentimes is there. And the new robot mixologist added in by this is actually really funny. Some of the terminal entries explain him, but he's basically a robo-brain that has a modification that his body will metabolize alcohol. So he sounds intoxicated, and that's not his programming, he's actually intoxicated.
My ambibulation chamber is feeling empty. Or is that my combobulating unit? Do I smell me a nuka shine? Let me just put that in my imbibing chamber and... Wow! Now that is a drink. Excuse me.
He has a lot of custom dialogue. Granted, it's only the first day. I'm sure over time this may grow mundane, but at least as of right now, I really like the implementation of pretty much everything I've seen. It still is small and very contained, but what they did pretty well. And in effect, after doing the quest, you're going to unlock these two new crafting tables, the brewing station, which allows you to create various kinds of alcohol. This is a crafting table that now will allow you to create some of the other things in the game, like beers and wines, but you also do have a secondary one, that with a fermentation station. This is a dual role. When you actually create spirits at the crafting table, you're just going to get an unfermented version. So you have to take that spirit, put it in the fermenter, and then you'll get the final form. For a lot of these existing ones, nothing's changed. Like the bourbon in the game is still the same bourbon. It's just now if you want to craft it yourself, you will have to go through this extra step of fermenting it. But for some of these new alcohols, such as the Nuka Shine, you can actually age them to be vintage. And Nuka Shine actually has some serious bonuses. Increasing melee damage by 100% for the vintage version is no joke, and actually has a really cool blackout effect as well as other visual effects that I without a doubt did appreciate. Although with this, at least as of right now, it doesn't seem like they went the extra mile with some of the base game content. Even though you can get a unfermented whiskey and turn it into a fermented whiskey, you can't turn a bourbon into a vintage bourbon, or at least in my testing, that was not a thing. And although this is cool, there are several issues or things I also didn't love about it. In effect, this entire quest is based around a frat party and Nuka Shine. That quest is particularly cool, but to unlock some of these other cocktails or beverages, you're going to be able to do follow-up quests at Biv that will be available on a daily basis. Except that's starting tomorrow. So after completing that first quest, you can only make Nuka Shine or any of the other vanilla options. So come some point tomorrow at Biv, there's going to be another quest you can do. It'll either give you access to a new recipe, or alternatively, it'll be one where you actually endure the experience of one of these new cocktails or other beverages. But you can't play them yet because they are time restricted. I'm not entirely sure what exactly this is, but it's likely 24 hours after you complete the Nuka Shine quest or something along those lines. which just rubbed me the wrong way. I really enjoyed the first quest, I wanted to do more, and I found that I can't. It's locked behind a time restriction. Outside of that, there definitely were a few glitches with this quest. After starting it and going to the terminal, I immediately got a crash to desktop. Upon loading back in, it took a little while for the door to spawn in, so I was just kind of sat here running around waiting for that. And even further, in one of the buildings, there was just no wall. You looked out into the blackness of the void. But honestly, even with those hiccups, this still was an overall positive experience. The only thing that really frustrated me, or that I wasn't a huge fan of, was how I have to wait in order to do some of those follow-up missions, or even further, unlock some of those additional recipes. One other issue that people are facing in-game is not really Bethesda's fault, but if you do find yourself falling through the map of the game, it's effectively since you modified some of the Fallout INI files and you will have to reset them. This really isn't on Bethesda, it's a byproduct of modding the game, and again, it is fairly easy to fix. Although there is one very tragic and actually kind of a big deal change that was added in by this. I think it's a bug, but there effectively was a murder committed by Bethesda. As you guys have probably seen in some of my videos, if you look at my camp, I normally have a tamed Megasloth there. Taming animals and being able to store them at your camp is a random event, and the Megasloth in particular is one of the rarer of these. I've had him for quite a few weeks at this point, and over that time we've developed a bit of a bond. Well, in this latest change, they actually made it so you can no longer have camps in certain DLC areas, or future DLC areas. My camp was placed right outside Vault 96, so when I logged in today, I discovered that I had to move my camp, but no big deal, right? These things are typically saved and it wouldn't be an issue. Except what I discovered when I placed my camp back down was tragic, as my Megasloth Jimmy was now replaced with a Radstag. Naturally, this is one of the most heartbreaking and worst glitches I've seen in this game thus far, and I just would ask we all have a moment of silence for Jimmy. And also, like 5 minutes later, some dude came around and killed my Radstag, which that's just a whole new level of messed up. And before we jump into the main patch notes, this patch actually brings several hidden changes, things that are never told to us. As of right now, all of these have been other new features or additions to the game, so it's not a bad thing, it's just curious that it was never mentioned. There's now a new random encounter that you can find in Fallout 76 with a brand new lemonade stand. It's fairly basic, but they actually are going to sell you 2 new recipes, one for just regular lemonade and then an alternative for hard lemonade. This is going to be a new recipe that you can craft at the brewing station, that being the newly added one. I've had success finding this guy right here on the map, but again, this is random. So sometimes when you go here, he won't be there and you may have to server hop. They finally added stash boxes into the White Springs bunker. So now after you go to all of those crafting stations, you can store things immediately. There are a couple of these added in, and it's a huge quality of life improvement for those of us that don't have these crafting tables on our own settlement. And then finally, you can actually now milk Brahmin. So this is a new mechanic in the game. You just go up to a Brahmin and try and milk them. It seems like it's not 100%, and if somebody else already milked them recently, you won't be able to. Sometimes after doing it, they would just run away and then you'd have to chase them again. But this milk is actually really good. You get 4 per milking, and it removes 25 rads as well as decreasing your thirst and hunger, and actually gives you 10 HP back. All fairly minor buffs, but if you just put your camp near a Brahmin spawn point, you could just get a ton of this stuff. I think the reason this was added in is it's actually going to be a crafting component of one of these new cocktails that we don't yet have access to, but we will have access to in the following days. If you go to the challenges menu, you could actually see the naming of all these new alcoholic beverages, one of them being a White Russian. In real life, the White Russian calls for cream, so this is probably where you'll use this crafting component later on. But either way, moving on, then we also did have some of the actual changes, both balance changes, new features, as well as bug fixes. As far as the balance changes, we got those long-awaited buffs or changes to energy and heavy weapons. The durability of these was improved. I'm not going to go over the specific details. This is something they previewed to us a few days ago. Both heavy weapons and energy weapons, they should do slightly more damage as well as be a bit more durable. Although honestly, in execution, they're still not that good. There's a lot of better options out there, and I think this is going to be one of those pseudo buffs. It's making a worse item better, but it's still kind of bad. But outside of that, several new features were also added in with this update. Now at your camp, you actually can craft radios, and you may notice after I place down this radio, there's no sound. That is, for me at least, and a lot of other content creators, probably one of the biggest updates to this game in a while. Bethesda now added in functionality so you can actually mute all in-game radios. This is a big deal because those radios play copyrighted music. So on this channel for the past 4.5 months, every single Fallout 76 video I've made has pretty much been muted because every once in a while there would be a radio in the background that I missed and I would get a copyright claim, which basically means they claim all of the revenue on that video. And some other times I was just like watching a show on my second monitor. But either way, what this means is, like in this video, how you could hear noises, in future videos you'll probably also be able to hear some gameplay noise in the background of my videos. Although one really big change that is definitely going to piss some people off, although at least as of right now it doesn't seem like too many are upset. A few weeks ago Bethesda implemented a new change in Fallout 76, so there's actually a weight cap. Originally in this game you could just hold an infinite amount of items and just be over encumbered all the time. Although after that they implemented a carry weight cap, and effectively it restricted the characters from gaining caps unless they reduced their carry weight under a certain limit, typically around 1,800 pounds. But you still had the option of trading those items or dropping them. Well, now they've actually changed that even further, and if you are over the carry weight cap, the only option you have is to delete those items. You can't drop them, you can't trade them with anyone else. So let's say you have a character right now that has 10,000 carry weight. In order to get that character down to the 1,500 or so limit, you're going to have to delete 8,500 pounds of items. So for most people, this isn't a big issue. In Bethesda's patch notes, they cite how it's supposed to be another hit to dupers who are using mule accounts. In effect, dupers would dupe a bunch of items and then put them all on a second character, and they would more or less act as a storage bank. So this update pretty much invalidates all of that. But even further, I have heard of a couple traders that just had a second character with legitimate items that happen to be over the carry weight limit still, that now will have to delete some of those items. But overall, this is a positive change and another step against dupers and duping. In game now, you could also track challenges, so when you open the map, you'll just see whatever challenges you are tracking right there, not having to dig through the menus to see where you stand with them. But even beyond that, player reporting is actually now a feature in this game, and this is very interesting. So now, any random player on the map you can click on and have the option to report, or alternatively, anyone on your friends list. This is definitely a positive change. I just wonder if Bethesda has the infrastructure to actually handle this. Bethesda support has certainly been backed up. You could find numerous accounts of people not getting responses from them, and now adding in this additional task of handling reports from players seems like it could be very overwhelming. I imagine they're probably going to get a lot of reports that are sometimes genuine and they will have to look into, but otherwise might just be somebody pissed. I also wonder what kind of automation was implemented with this. If let's say 5,000 people report my character, do I instantly get banned even if I do nothing wrong? Does every ban have to get manually reviewed by a physical person? And then if that is the case, you get back to my original problem with the manpower issue that currently exists with Bethesda support. So all in all, it is a positive change. I'm just very curious to see how effective it is going forward and how Bethesda handles some of the potential automated bans with this. And outside of that, there actually were a ton of bug fixes with this update. It really was one of the biggest updates this game has ever seen. There were several different exploits, duping, and otherwise that were patched. That's actually got a ton of bug fixes, as well as some of those bugs with the adrenal reaction mutation were patched, and some of the exploits around that also. Legendary creatures will now correctly drop an item every time they're killed, as well as approaching the corpse of an enemy that was killed at long distance no longer occasionally causes the corpse to disappear and the enemy to immediately respawn. That was one that I encountered a lot, and that was actually really frustrating. The salvaged Assaultron head now actually works. There's been a glitch with that thing, I think since release, that made it so when you actually take it out, it'll load all of the ammo into it immediately, and then one shot would deplete all of it, which in effect made the entire thing useless because it would just delete all of your ammo in one shot. You can now actually get 2 and 3 star legendary plasma weapons. You can now pacify mole miners with the Wasteland Whisperer perk. Some of those pre-placed fusion generators around the map will now spawn with a fusion core in them on occasion. And honestly, those were just some of the biggest ones. There's a lot more that you can read on the patch notes. So all in all, it is a pretty positive patch. It's definitely not without problems. I definitely encountered some issues with the DLC. I'm sure other people encountered other issues. I don't love the way the DLC was implemented with that whole day restriction, but as far as the quality of the content we have, even though it's simple, it was good. I genuinely enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to logging on tomorrow to play more. The character they implemented was interesting, even though he doesn't have dialogue options. and just everything was up to the quality I've expected from Bethesda and actually kind of surpassed my expectations to an extent. But either way, yeah, that's pretty much going to wrap it up for this video. Later today, I will probably have a breakdown of that trailer. I may also have a mental breakdown myself when I realize I have barely any time to write this paper and study. But hey, sleep is optional, right? As always, again, I thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you all next time. Later.